What's going on, everybody? Episode 202 of the White Cat Outdoors podcast. Bring you to the table while we talk about the outdoors. Back at it again with the white vans. It's Tom. Tom, for the third week in a row, calling his shots. He's got his New York buck tag filled, and it was a wild recovery, but it's weird because it was a perfect shot and then just ended with just this wild recovery that we can't wait to tell you guys about. There's some information throughout the podcast that can help you guys learn something, maybe help you with, future tracks, because perfect shots don't always result in perfect tracks. I think I said that right. I've had a few beers before I started doing this intro, but that's what you get. Anyway, I'm obviously rambling. Let's quit that and let's get tuned in to this week's episode.
So I did the cardinal sin. I pull up my bow and then I look dead at his antlers. I got out of the truck, and when I slammed the door, I heard gobbles all around me.
Let's see it.
Alaska, moose, spot and sock. That is the bucket list. I agree.
White Cat Outdoors. White Cat Outdoors.
How's it going, gang? Thanks for joining us at the table while we talk about the outdoors.
I already said that.
Did you? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I will when I do the intro.
Yeah, but I wanted to say it too.
Fine, now I'm just going to
You should not do
I'm
that.
gonna do that for the whole episode.
I really hope
I'm
you
just going to
don't.
rudely interrupt Tom mid-story with slurping beer.
Are you
Why do
saying
you
Tom?
think I'm going to be the one telling the story?
Eh,
Yeah, 3 weeks in a row.
Turns out Tom's got a rash.
Yeah, he's just itching that finger on the trigger nonstop.
Yeah.
It's a release.
All right,
Well,
well,
you have a thumb release.
Yeah.
Right.
can we just call him Itchy Tom?
I don't think that's a good name.
I don't like that.
Leave it in the comments if you guys like Itchy Tom.
I think no one will. Even if they were going to leave a comment, they're not going to now.
Like, no. It's not what you think. It's because I like to shoot. You'd have to do every time somebody be like, "Are you Itchy Tom?" You're like, "Yeah," but it's not what you think.
Yeah, we're just not going to... not even going to entertain it.
We're moving on from it.
Yeah. So this is 3 weeks in a row. And if you go back to the Moose Camp series, we did My Doe podcast.
Yep.
And then we did the Moose Camp. And Uncle Frank said, who's going to be next? And I said, I think it might be me.
And you were right.
And it was. And then we did that episode. And I said, I think it's going to be me again. And here we are.
Yeah.
This is 3 in a row. It's me again. I'm just going to say it.
You're going to be so bold.
I think it might be me again, week 4.
How does Hat Trick Tommy sound?
Well, it's only going to be Hat Trick Tommy for a week because I don't know what we do 4 of something is.
Tommy Four Cheese.
Nick will eat his hat if it's 4 in a row.
No. I will never make a bet like that with Tom until he eats his hat.
He does owe you one hat eaten.
Oh,
Yeah.
we'll get there. I didn't say when. Just said I
You were
would.
so pissed. Like, I will literally eat my hat.
Yeah, and I may.
See,
I
you
just may.
eat some hay.
Yeah.
Make
So
stuff out of clay.
anyway, we went. First one was a doe. Second one was a buck. Third one, buck.
Big ball.
Fuck.
Yeah.
And this one's a good story, and it's an educational story. So hang around for the whole episode. If
Yeah,
you
bring
weren't
your
going
kids
to
along.
anyway. There's a lot to learn from this.
Yes. So if you listen to last week's
Tom's
Deer
got so
Camp
many beer
series,
cans around, we can't figure out which one's got beer in it.
That's a good problem to have, I suppose.
I shot my buck, my PA buck, on a Saturday. Got it all dressed up nice. Then we went over to Frank's for his birthday Halloween party.
Mm-hmm.
I celebrated my buck, as you should.
Went to
And-
bed early.
No, not quite. Austin
It was
talked us
lunchtime.
into stopping into the French Creek Saturday night on the way up to, after we had already left the Halloween party.
Austin's pretty good about that.
Yeah, so we were there shooting pool, and it was starting to become very apparent that I was not waking up for a morning hunt. Just
The vibe wasn't right there that night, though.
no, I wasn't getting any bucks on camera in the morning. It was all evening.
It had nothing to do with the amount of alcohol you were drinking in French Creek.
No, almost none. So we go to bed Saturday night, and I did wake up at
Yeah, we did.
5 o'clock, and
It's
was I drunk? I don't know. Was I hungover?
Was there a lot of water falling from the sky? Yeah.
Yeah, I flipped on the porch light, and it was raining sideways, and I said, "That's all I needed."
You
to
said,
see.
I'm too drunk to taste this chicken.
Yep, I said, time for me to go back to bed. Didn't even try and wake Nick or Austin up.
I was up. I saw it too.
Yeah. So I go back to bed. Wake
I think
up
you stoked
around,
the fire too.
I probably did. Woke up around the ripe hour of like 9 o'clock, and I was a little hungry. So woke the rest of the crew up. We went down to our favorite spot for breakfast, the Dutch Village.
I tell you what, that I think we've been going to the Dutch Village more this deer season than ever, and I think it's because of how shitty the weather's been.
It has been pretty shitty weather.
I'm sorry, like I love to deer hunt, but when I wake up and it's pouring,
I ain't going.
I've already done it twice this year, and that's only because like if I didn't do that, I don't get in the woods. Like the other morning, I was out. My dad and I both went out because Tom was already tagged out, so he couldn't hunt, or in PA anyway. And my dad and I are out there, and we're a couple hundred yards apart. But he texts me at like 9 o'clock, and he's like,
This
"Dude,"
ain't
he's
it.
like, "I way underdressed. I have no rain gear. I'm soaked." He's like, "I'm going back to the barn. I'm gonna light up the fire." I'm like, "Oh, you son of a bitch! Why would you tell me that?" I mean, it's
Now
just-
you're like, well, I'm leaving too.
and it's pouring. So I'm like, I'm gonna give it till 10 o'clock. I'm
Well,
like,
our weather this year has been all rain in the morning and then nice in the afternoon. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think we've had rain all day. It's always until like
if we
2,
did, it's
3
like
o'clock.
light, yeah. But anyway, so I'm sitting there. I'm like, I'm gonna sit it out till 10, and then 10 o'clock it started to kind of lighten up, and I'm like, all right, things are gonna move, you know. So I'm like, oh, let's just sit. And it's like 10:30, and then it just opens back up, and I'm like, fuck this. I'm like,
Yeah.
we're heading back.
Done with it.
I was like, stoke that fire. I'm on my way. But yeah. Anyways, Tom, go ahead. Dutch Village in the
Yeah.
morning, 9 o'clock.
Yep. Had ourselves a breakfast buffet. Go back to camp. And actually, we had a pretty full camp for the afternoon. Me, Nick, and Austin were there from Saturday night until Sunday. And Frank and his dad, you've heard him on the Moose Camp series, showed up Sunday afternoon for an evening hunt.
And Dad came up too, didn't he?
No.
Oh,
Dad
no?
was not there.
Ah.
Yeah. But, and I will tell you this, the night before Saturday, we're at the Halloween party. I get a picture right at last light of this nice shooter buck coming out into one of our food plots.
I'd say number one or two that we've seen this year.
Yeah. Right at last light. And I said, that's where I'm hunting tomorrow if the wind allows. So I had picked my spot already. And Saturday night or Sunday night rolls around. Wind's perfect for that stand. I'm like, well, that's where I'm going. Everyone else picks their location. And I get up on stand. Actually, I was feeling ambitious. I think we got on stand at like 2:30 or 3 o'clock.
Yeah, I think it was about 2:30.
And I was hunting a field edge, and it was windy as a bugger. And I'm looking north, and the wind is coming from the north at about 15 miles an hour. Gusts probably near 20. And I'm like, this sucks. This is cold. And I didn't see a deer until about 5 o'clock. And first deer I saw was 2 doe come running out of the woods across the goldenrod field into our big radish field in the middle. And I'm like, oh shit, they're getting chased. Well, there was nothing behind them. I'm like, well.
They're just in a hurry for the radishes.
Yeah, I don't know. They did not like the wind because they got to the radish field and they were head up, looking around, feeding, and then next thing you know, they just take off running again. I'm like, yeah, they're acting spooky tonight.
Mm-hmm.
A little while later, these same 2 doe come running up the field around this little point and straight across the food plot. I mean, they were both big does, and they were like 20 yards away, but they were just running. There's nothing I could do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, that sucks. Then a little while later, from right out of this trail that dumps into the food plot, out comes a mom and her fawn. And they're walking around, come out into the food plot, can't shoot a mom in front of her fawn. And they walk and turn right at me and go directly underneath me. And I'm actually looking at these deer through the grate on my platform. Like, when I say underneath me, I mean directly underneath me. And they walk straight behind me into the hardwoods, and I kind of lose sight of them. And it was like 20 minutes later, it's just starting to get dark, and I hear from behind me. I look back, and here comes that fawn again. Now she's right underneath me again, and then she gets to the edge of the food plot. There's an apple tree. She's standing under there eating apples, and I'm just watching her. And it's like 5 minutes till dark now, and I'm like, as soon as this fawn leaves, like, I'm packing up and leaving. Like, this party's over.
Mm-hmm.
And I look over to my right out to the trail that dumps into the food plot, and I see a big deer standing there. And I'm like, oh, that must be Mama.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, it steps out, and I see Cage. I'm like,
Game on.
oh, yeah, you're done. And in my mind, I'm thinking, this is last light. This is exact same situation this buck came in out the day before. It's got to be him.
Mm-hmm.
So,
You are not him.
no, turns out it wasn't him. Still a good buck. Very good
Yeah,
buck.
still, I mean, probably, we've been arguing in camp, not really like arguing, but like discussing where he falls in the lineup, and he's, could be 2, maybe 3, but like
Yeah,
definitely,
I think
but
2 as
definitely
well.
top 3 of bucks ever killed in camp.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, wasn't number 2 or 1 on the hit list, but he's
He
secured.
was on the hit list.
Yeah, he was definitely a hit list buck, but not, what we thought he was, but still, to kill the number 2 buck in camp
You're
and the
doing
number
good.
1, okay, whatever.
Doing something right. So he steps out, and he's like 16 yards. And so I draw back on him. And like I said, these deer were spooky. So he wasn't coming out to feed. He was a brisk walk out into this field. He was on a mission for something.
Mm-hmm.
So I draw back on him. I give him the old map. Stop him. Looks at me. Touch the release. Luminoc lights up. I see it disappear right behind the front shoulder. Thanks, Nick. That was a very crucial part of the story.
I told you I was just going to interrupt you through this.
And see the arrow disappear in him, kick out the other side, and he takes off like a bat out of hell, running straight north towards the road.
In the goldenrod.
Yeah, straight through the goldenrods. And he gets like 150 yards, and I can barely see. I thought I lost sight of him. And I'm thinking, I think he just went down right there. And because I saw him, and then it was like he was gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I think he went down right there. So I climb down, find my arrow, turn my Luminoc off. Arrow's covered in blood. I'm like, all right, this looks good. So I make the long loop around just to stay out of the area this deer ran. Met up with Nick until I think I just shot that big 8. And he's like, oh, no way. Are you serious? I'm like, yeah. He's like, did you find your arrow? Yeah, covered in blood. So we go back up to camp, and, we're going over everything, getting everything ready for the track. I wanted to give it about an hour. And they're all, where'd you hit it? I'm like, I watched the arrow, right behind the front shoulder, maybe a touch high, but it was pretty close, so I think he's
Yeah, a
smoked.
little high is good if you're close.
Yeah. And so we give it an hour, and we go down there, go to my arrow. Everyone looks at the arrow. They're like, oh, yeah, that's a good arrow. There's no blood around it. I'm not too worried. I know a lot of times it takes 30, 40 yards for it to fill up to the entrance and exit holes till it really starts dumping out. So we're kind of pacing back and forth along the edge of the goldenrod and find a little speck of blood where he ran into the goldenrods. So we're like, all right, we're on the trail. And we followed this trail. It took us probably, an hour to go 150 yards?
Yeah,
At
it was.
least.
We were just finding pin drop.
Well, and the only way we were fine, like I was just walking like in a straight line that like looked like maybe that's where he was going, and then like every 40 yards or so, I'd be like, oh, I got like a pin drop.
speck.
It's like you wonder how you even find them. It was
Well,
that
and the
bad.
one that you found, like we lost blood, and then we were just kind of walking through the goldenrods. Like he's got to be laying right here based on how Tom hit him, and it was like 80 yards of just walking, kind of grid searching. And Nick's like, I have a speck of blood. Like,
Which I mean, like to think about like how like it's a goldenrod field.
yeah,
For me to find blood 80 yards away, like
yeah.
just
We last blood, we just were like, fuck it, we're just gonna walk.
Yeah.
And then you found one pin drop.
in high winds.
Yeah.
So like the goldenrods are just going nuts. Like I was like I saw it and I was like, wow. I grabbed that stem and I was like,
no way, this is.
I'm
blood.
like that's blood. I'm like, all right, everybody, right here.
Yeah.
This is the guy.
So yeah, I mean, obviously everyone on the track was like a little disheartened at the amount of blood.
Yeah, they're like, are you sure you're double lung this time? I'm like, I'm telling you, I watched my Luminoc hit, and Nick pulled up a deer chart. It's got like the grid on it. He's like, where did you hit this deer? I'm like, I'm telling you, I hit this deer in this square, whatever number letter combination it was. I'm like, that's where it was. He's like, all right, that's a dead deer. I'm like, I'm telling you, this is a dead deer. So we track for 150 yards, find last blood, and we're like 30 yards from the edge of the road. And I'm like, man,
And he is not veered off the path.
Yeah,
yet.
it was a
just
dead
straight.
straight line.
I'm like, I can't believe this thing would cross the road.
Mm-hmm.
So we mark last blood, and then we go up to the road, and it's a dirt road, and like we're kicking the road to see how easy you can disturb it. And I mean, you walk on it and you're leaving a footprint. So we're like, if this deer crossed the road,
There's a track.
there's a track. So we're shining our lights, looking up and down this road. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Can't find a drop of blood. Can't find a fresh deer track. And I even had a little handheld spotlight, and directly across the road was a totally open field
Yeah, just
for
grass.
probably 70 yards, and then it was
back into
Woods.
thick and goldenrods and
Right,
woods,
it's right on the
swamp.
edge of a swamp across the road.
Yeah, it's thick.
yeah. So I walk out into that field, shine it. He's not laying in there, and now I'm like, what the hell? Like, this does not make sense.
Mm-hmm. And now, like, you're second guessing. Everyone else is like, maybe you didn't see what you saw with your arrow. Like, based on how you said you hit it, we should have found more blood. Like, we're
Yeah.
following pin drops. There was more blood on your arrow than we found in 200 yards of tracking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
it was
everyone's
bad.
like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Like I had like I was like it was weird because like I'm like I trust what Tom tells me he saw.
Oh, yeah.
100%. Tom tells me I hit behind the front shoulder. I believe that he hit behind the front shoulder.
And where we were
but that
finding...
the blood trail is just it's telling you a different story, and it's like, man, I Tom's accurate. He always tells the truth. You know, I believe what he saw, but this blood trail is telling me a totally different story.
Like, the amount of blood we were getting was like a brisket hit or...
Almost a gut shot kind of blood.
Yeah.
Like, and
Not
that's
the color or
not
anything.
the color, but just the amount of blood
or
you'll
like
find.
backstrap.
Yeah, or backstrap's probably pretty good.
But we're looking... I mean, the height that we're finding blood is, like, perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
you're-
like below waist.
your waist. It's at like knee level. Like it was a
Yeah.
good.
So it's like it's coming out at the right height. So it's like it was throwing everybody through a loop.
Yeah, everyone was very perplexed about what was going on. Looking at the arrow and what Tom said, we had one story. Following the trail, we had a completely different story. We don't have a dead deer. We're like
Like, every deer I've shot double lung has been dead.
within 100.
Yeah.
And then I'll admit, like, it was kind of disheartening because, like, you know, Austin was with us and he had to go. He works third shift.
Yeah.
So Austin peels off. You know, I got to go to work. So like, and it's a little like obviously he's got to do his thing, but it's like a little bit of a blow. It's like, man, you know,
Yeah.
sucks. So then we get back and then you and your dad are like, hey, we're piecing out. So now it's just me and Tom. I'm like, damn, like this is just it. Like obviously I know that you know you have to do your thing and everything, but it was like felt like everything was just like, everybody's like, yeah, we're
wind
not
out
gonna,
of the sails.
yeah, and it was just like tough. So Tom and I go back to camp, and we're sitting there, and he's telling me, he's like, dude, I'm telling you that deer's dead. And I'm like, I believe you, man. I'm like, but we got to get a dog. Like, this is.
Well, before
can't-
that, we were sitting up at camp.
No,
and
we were talking about I guess, where are you going with
I was
this?
going to say, we went, after everyone left, me and you went back.
We went to camp first and
Yeah.
we talked about a dog.
Couldn't find one.
Yeah, we couldn't get a guy.
Yeah,
to
because
get-
you
guy.
started messaging people when we were standing at the road
Yeah.
right before Dad and I left.
So we sat at camp for like an hour trying to get a hold of a guy with a dog and couldn't get anything. And I told Tom, I said, why don't we just go look? Like, let's go check. I'm like, maybe he did break to the right. Like, let's
Because
head
if
down.
he would have broke to the right, it was 50 yards, and then he was in the woods.
Yeah.
So I'm like, maybe
He
he
made it just
really
in the
wasn't
wood
feeling
line.
good, and he's like, I got to try and get into the woods.
So we jump in the woods and we maybe went 10 yards in. And I looked at Tom and I said, if we have any chance of getting a dog, we can't be doing this.
Yeah.
Like, let's get
Yeah,
out of
you
here.
don't want to mess up
I'm
that
like,
scent
I
trail.
know that at this point we had nobody on book for a dog. But I told Tom, I looked at Tom, I said, hey, if there's a slight chance we can find somebody with a dog, we are doing it wrong right now. I'm like,
Yeah, you need to leave.
one, it's dark. Like, we aren't going to be able to see shit unless you walk over top of it. And we're just making this way harder if by some miracle we get a hold of a dog. So we made the decision, at this point we did not have a dog lined up. We got
But
to
what
get
we
out.
did do was, all these guys that I got a hold of told me, oh, sorry, I can't do it. Try this hotline. So it's like a Western New York Deer Trackers hotline. You call this number, you leave a voicemail stating like what county you're in, what time you shot, your name, phone number, and then it dispatches that message to all of the trackers that are in this program. And then you just hope one
Wait for a
calls you back.
response.
Mind you, this is a volunteer service, so it's like these guys don't do this for a living.
Yeah, they're
It's at this point 10 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
on a Sunday. Most
Yeah.
of these guys probably work in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So Tom and I'll be honest, wind was coming out of my sails too. Like I was like, I felt like this chance. And then like we come to the realization, it's like, now we've got to, meet this guy up here if we can even get something going. It was like,
yeah, someone's gonna have to take a day off of work to come
Yeah.
back up, or
Yeah, which-
come after work. Which the longer you wait, the harder it is to recover the deer.
yeah.
So,
So it was like, we can't wait till after work. So Tom and I were like, well, we're going to have,
Hold on. You're getting ahead of my story here. So I called the hotline. No luck getting a hold of a tracker. Me and Nick go back, start this little half-assed grid search, decide, you know what, this ain't it. Let's just get out of here. If we're going to get a dog, we're just screwing it up. So as we're walking back, my phone rings, and it's a tracker. And I'm like, all right, finally, something good's happening. And he says, oh, I can't meet you out there tonight, but I can meet you out there tomorrow. And I'm like, I work tomorrow. I said, can you meet me here at 6 in the evening? And he said, yeah, I can. And I wasn't worried about temperature. I wasn't worried about this deer spoiling because it was like 40 degrees.
yeah, it was cold enough.
And he's like, yeah, I can meet you at 6, but that's 24 hours after the shot, makes it a lot harder on the dog. So I'm like, all right, let me make a couple phone calls. I'll call you right back. So make a few phone calls, decide we can get there at 11. Just work the morning, get up there at 11. So call him back. I'm like, yeah, 11 o'clock, I'll meet you. He's like, that's perfect. So we met him up there, and
I didn't make any phone calls. I waited till Monday morning. I said,
Called
"Hey,
in
Bob,"
sick.
I said, "Hey, no, I went to work in the morning. I said, hey, I'm leaving at noon.
well, it actually worked out well because he didn't lie. My mom and dad were leaving to go on a vacation. So he said, my dad's going out of town. I got some stuff I got to finish up.
That's not a lie.
The two didn't really correlate. The stuff he had to get finished up had
Nothing to do with Dad going out of town.
But it worked. It sounded good.
The things you do to supply this borderline addiction of hunting. Because
Well, and that's not even like you're supplying your addiction. You're trying to recover.
I
an
know,
animal
but
at
it
that
was
point.
killing me. Like everything about this deer says it should be dead except this blood trail.
Yeah,
And I'm like, I have to see it through.
yeah.
And so I was like, all right, I'm in. I told Tom, I said, let's do it.
Get up there like 11 o'clock, meet the guy.
I will say before, I don't want to give the guy's name away just because I don't, without his permission, I don't want to throw it out there. But while Tom and I were waiting, we called this hotline. We're calling all these other people. I'm on that hotline's website, and there's one guy's name that's just like, because they have like a recovery sheet, and there's pictures of a guy, a dog, and the deer, and over and over and over again, it's the same guy,
recovered by so-and-so, recovered by.
Just over and over and over again. And I looked at Tom and I said, that's the guy. That's who we want. But it's a hotline. You don't call somebody
you don't
directly.
know who you're going to get.
Yeah. So, anyway, I just wanted to bring that part up where we're like, this is the guy we want.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward.
We got the guy we wanted. He pulls up, and
mind you, the guy drives like an hour to, like, he's not from like that.
Around the area.
He comes from an hour out. I'm like, awesome.
And what was his dog's name?
Lex.
Lex? Yeah, Nick goes, so what's your dog's name? And he goes, Lex, but don't bother calling her because she's deaf. I'm like, okay.
You guys are like, shit, this dog's going to suck.
He opens up the truck door, picks Lex up, sets her down, totally gray in the face. Like, I don't know how old this dog was, but this dog was old.
Not young.
I'm like, this guy has recovered literally every deer on the website.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know he's good, but
doesn't look good.
Doesn't look that great. Well, I tell you what, Lex
knows what she's doing.
Yeah,
she's an animal.
I think it's one of them deals where if you lose one sense, your other ones are heightened.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to hear to track deer.
Sure don't. Just need the nose.
Yeah. So this guy tells us, let's take us to the shot.
Mm-hmm.
So we take him, and he wants to go the long way because we don't know where this deer, if it's dead, where it's at. So we go the long way around to avoid potentially mudding up a blood trail.
Yeah.
So we get there, and the dog wasn't really finding anything at the shot site. And I'm like, man, that's a little disheartening. I'm like, I know where this deer went. And he's like, she's not really picking anything up. And she kept, just walking, like kind of like a dog would do walking in the field, just kind of walking around. I'm like, okay. He's like, why don't you take me to Last Blood? And I'm like, yeah, that's where the arrow's at. We marked it with the arrow. So we go walking up there, and he brings the dog over. Dog sniffs the arrow for like 30 seconds.
Mind you, 6 of us have handled this arrow.
Yeah.
So probably not the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, looking back, that's probably something we shouldn't have done, and going forward, like, we shouldn't do that anymore. But obviously, the dog can handle it. That dog could handle it. I'm sure other dogs can too. But you just don't want to give them all that extra stimuli to throw off their nose.
Yeah. So this dog sniffs the arrow. Guy lets the dog go, and that dog just barrels across the road. And we're like, the deer didn't cross the road. There's no trail, there's no blood, nothing like that.
Yeah, we searched on the road for tracks for a long time, just looking
trying
for
to
some indication that it crossed the road.
Yeah, we were basically trying to write that off that it didn't happen.
Yeah.
That dog barrels across the road, dives into this field, jumps down in the woods, hops an old barbed wire fence, and guy starts pulling the dog back, says, I don't think, if this deer's fatally hit, it didn't jump a fence, But this dog was like pulling back, and he's like, I'm going to tell you right now, when she don't come back when I yank, it's because she's pretty sure of what she's telling me.
Mm-hmm.
So he, for a little bit, keeps yanking on her. She finally was like, whatever, fine, comes back. He's like, I want to take her back up to the field and just see what she does. Takes her back up to the field, and she barrels right back down. And then he's like, all right, we're just going to let her do her thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we get on the other side of this fence, and the dog throws her nose up and just kind of sniffs around. Cuts, like, backtracks, like like kind of at an angle, was heading north, cut back like southeast, right to the deer.
Mm-hmm.
So then the guy explained to me, he's like, Lex is a retired bird dog. She follows scent very, very well. And a lot of times what happens, especially with that high wind, is the deer's running one way, and a lot of its scent is
pushed
another way. Yeah, so that dog was following away from the track and then got downwind of the deer, and then was like, yep, and then came back to it.
Yeah, so she's not in its tracks, but she's right on it.
Yeah,
she knows exactly
the
where
deer
it
never
is.
crossed that fence. So we jumped the fence and then had to jump it back to get back to the deer, but she was following scent that was on the other side of the fence, even though that deer never crossed that fence, which I thought was insane.
Yeah.
And, from the time Lex got dropped out of the truck till we were standing over that deer was like 45
And
minutes.
half of it was monkeying around. From the
Yeah.
time we brought her to the arrow and she officially...
Yeah, because Tom has to fill, like in New York State, Tom had to fill out a bunch of paperwork. I'm Tom Sobolewski. This is my tag number. This is when I shot it. All this stuff. It gets reported back to the DNR and all that stuff.
But no, I'm saying from the time Lex actually got like locked into the trail at Last Blood to when she was standing over the deer, I mean, it was
Maybe
no
30
time.
minutes, 25 minutes. It was insane. Like that, it was watching a professional master at work. It was insane.
Yeah, and like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, as far as like a teachable moment and something that's educational to take away, when you got the deer, you hit right where you thought you did.
Double long
You-
liver. It was slightly quartering to. I hit double long liver and it went over 250 yards.
Yeah, so what you saw was exactly what happened, and even though the blood trail that we saw was not indicating that that's what happened, but a lot of people would have saw that blood trail and been like,
That's
that
not a,
deer's
that's
gone.
not a dead deer.
Yeah, that deer's still up and moving. He's fine. But you really, really need to follow your shot through to the very end. Exhaust every option.
And follow your instincts. If you're sitting there telling yourself that's a dead deer,
Probably dead. If you've been doing it as long as all of us have and have killed as many deer as we have, you know what you're seeing.
and to me, you owe that deer every effort.
Exactly.
possible.
You need to exhaust every option you have to recover that deer.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't. Sometimes the deer
It
lives,
happens,
sometimes
and
the
it
deer
sucks.
dies and you don't get it, but you need to give it everything you have and call a dog, grid search, do whatever you have to do. And,
I like to.
and
yeah.
sometimes, like in this case, the deer was smoked. And it was,
It was double lung and liver.
and where we quit looking, if we hadn't gotten a dog, the deer was 30 yards from the
Yeah,
last
where,
spot we
where
were
Tom
looking.
was standing with the spotlight was 30 yards from this deer,
Yeah.
which is insane.
So how many people do you think have gotten that close to a deer and then be like, it's gone?
That's kind of what keeps me looking when, like, if something like this happens, for not even just for me. I've lost 2 deer in my life, and I've been hunting for 15 years, and it sucks. But even like me, or if I'm helping somebody else track, I always feel like I'm 30 yards from finding that deer. Like I have the hardest time giving up because I
know.
just don't want to.
Yeah.
Like I always feel like that spot I turn around, like
He's
it's
right
this
there.
is terrible advice, but it's all gonna wrap up. They say like you can't lose gambling unless you quit.
Yeah.
And like it correlates because like you can't never find a deer if you keep looking. Like like you said, exhaust every option possible. Like you just keep going.
I think the biggest thing I learned from this is if you have a shade of doubt, like if things aren't looking good, you don't have the blood trail, get a dog.
Yeah. Yeah, don't go
And
crazy.
don't muck up the area.
Yeah, leave everything intact for the dog to work with.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to be such a popular thing. There's a lot of options to find dogs on Facebook groups, and I love that New
Hotlines.
York has that hotline. I don't think PA
Well, and
has anything
so
like that.
the other thing that I love about New York is you have to be registered with the state. You have to you and your dog have to pass certain tests. And like what I love PA. I love living in Pennsylvania. But any guy can grab their dog and say I'm a blood tracker and put themselves on Facebook, and they could charge money and everything. And their dog doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
New York, you have to pass tests and everything, and it's all volunteer. Tips are obviously appreciated. Tom tipped the guy very well. He was very appreciative. But that's just to kind of solidify getting that call back if, by some chance.
He obviously liked the tip because he texted me personally afterwards and said, if you ever need help again, call me directly. Don't use the hotline. I'm like, obviously the tip was enough.
Yeah. But anyway, so it's like, New York, there's some credibility. So like when you
Yeah.
call that hotline,
you know
it's
you're
like,
getting a credible,
yes.
worthwhile dog and handler.
yeah,
that
and I
know
liked,
what they're doing.
I like the way it was handled. Like, the guy shows up, takes Tom's license, takes the number, he calls it in, like, hey, I'm going on a track. This is the time the deer was hit. This is how long it's been. All this different things, reports back, all that stuff. And it's just, it was very professional and, it was just a neat experience.
Yeah, and it ended exactly the way you wanted it to with
Yeah.
a dead deer.
And guy stuck around, helped drag it out. It was like just a great dude.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, if there's anything to take away from this is trust your instincts and go after the freaking deer. Even if you're doubting it, do everything you can to recover
yeah,
the
and
animal.
like Tom said, get a dog.
Yeah.
If blood trail starts to get a little dicey, do not grid search until you've
grid
exhausted
search is
getting-
not the first option.
Yeah. Definitely get the dog first.
Yeah.
But thanks again, Tom, for your third episode in a row.
I'm gonna try and do 4.
Yeah?
Baloney.
Yeah.
Not gonna happen.
So we're gonna start this thing here, where Tom, you're gonna do your own closing, and then I'm actually gonna close the episode out. We're gonna try it out, see how it goes. So, Tom, before I close this out for real, so I don't get interrupted, why don't you close it out for yourself?
Also, I gotta say it's been a hell of a bow season already. I got $2 in a doe down. I don't know what you guys are doing. I don't want to be in the spotlight 4 weeks in a row, but I mean, if you guys don't shoot something, I'm gonna have to go out and shoot one just to keep the Deer Camp series going. So, what do you say, you guys get outside?
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
It hasn't been from a lack of trying. But thank you again, Tom. Great buck story, very informative, and I had a great time the whole way through. A little bit of doubt just adds to suspense at the end of the story. Makes it all worth it. That's why we do it. Things are starting to get spooky out there in the timber. Bucks are getting wild, so you guys don't know what to do. Get outside.